In the preceding chapter of our Total Training InDesign CS6 Essentials course, we covered how InDesign can create useful templates we can quickly and efficiently turn into documents that we're producing on a regular basis. In this chapter, we'll show you how you can use those templates to quickly create consistent, high-quality documents that are based on those templates, as well as how to fine-tune those documents when the template doesn't do exactly what we're looking to accomplish. In this chapter of our InDesign CS6 course, we're going to take the template that we built in the previous chapter of this course and use it to create a promotional trifold brochure. There are a number of ways that I can open this template. I could open it right here from the InDesign welcome screen. I could go to the File pull-down menu, or I could just use the keyboard shortcut Command-O to open it up working on the Mac platform, Control-O if I'm working on the PC. But in this case, what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to open this up from the Finder in the Mac operating system. If you're working in the Windows PC platform, I'd ask you to open up your Project Files folder on your Windows desktop and do the same thing I'm going to do right here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click right over here just very quickly, and I'm going to go to randy5.indt. This is the file that we used in the previous chapter to create our trifold brochure template. So what I'm going to do in this case is I'm going to click on it just once. It'll show that icon right over here to the right. It'll show it's an InDesign template. Notice it's not offset to the left as it would be with a little box if we were working with an InDesign document. And this little page turned down is at the bottom of the page instead of the top. These aren't really significant in the total scheme of things, but these are quick indications that we'll know if we're looking at the icon for this file that this is a template and not a document file. I'm going to double click on this, and when I do, what it's going to do is it's going to create a brand new document. In this case, as you can see, named Untitled by whatever number sequence that you're working with. So in this case, what's happened is we've opened up the template and it's created a brand new untitled file. That's what an InDesign template does. It allows you to create copies of the original file to work with to build new InDesign documents without messing up the original. I'm going to go to the Pages panel, and as I do this, I'm going to double click on page 1. There's my page 1. And as I've got this available now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to start working on building my InDesign document. Let's start by building the Mail panel that we'll have loaded in the center of this screen. Now, I'm going to take this and I'm going to build a reversed element out of it. As we found with previous exercises working with InDesign, we can put little indicators to say this is where this is going to fold in this document, or what we can do is we can design across the entire panel to give printers easy insight for what we could do to take this and make that happen. And that's in fact what I'm going to do right here. I'm going to get my rectangle tool and I'm going to go right down here to the edge and draw a frame that completely fills the space in between the fold lines between the first and second third columns, and then goes all the way off to the far edge of the bleed area outside of my page trim. Now it's got its default stroke of black and fill of none. We're going to change that by going to the swatches palette, and what we're going to do is we're going to use that color that we're working with, Pantone 288C, that we use for a number of Total Training collaterals. We're going to give that a fill of that blue, and we're going to take that stroke and we're going to make that none. So as I do this, I have a dark frame defined, working right here, of Pantone 288C, cyan 100, magenta 88, yellow 27, and key color black of 19%, that process color approximation that's built off of the template. Let's go grab a couple of graphics to build into there. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to place a Total Training logo in there. I'm going to get my selection tool, and I'm going to go Control D if I'm working on a Windows platform machine, or since I'm working on the Mac for this chapter of our InDesign course, I'm going to go Command D, and what that'll do is that'll open up the Place dialog box. I'm going to navigate my way to Chapter 6, and I'm going to grab myself the logo that I'm looking for. Let me pull this over just a little bit. And I'm going to grab the Total Training Tagline Reversed.eps file. So I'm going to double click on that and place it. Whoop, that's not what I wanted to do. I wanted to actually place this as a separate item. So I'm going to go Edit, Undo, and what it'll do is it'll take that text and it'll place that graphic inside of the place gun and allow me to click and place that separately. So now I have my total training showing as a separate piece as I'm working with this document. Now, it's nice that I have that there, but that's not the way that I would normally lay down the logo for the mail panel that would go on the back of my trifold brochure. I want to rotate that. So I'm going to go to my control panel here, and I'm going to set a center reference point, and I'm going to go to the rotation options box here, and instead of leaving it at 0, I'm going to rotate that at minus 90 degrees, which means it'll rotate it 90 degrees clockwise, just like so. And I can take this, and now I can place this right over, just like so, on the back panel of my trifold brochure. Now, in an earlier chapter, we checked Guides and Back, located in the Preferences, Guides and Pasteboards, under Guide Options. In order to see this top magenta guide a little better, you may want to uncheck that. Just be sure to lock your guides if you do so. That command can be found under the View menu, Grids and Guides. Now, that looks kind of ugly, and the reason for that is not because the graphic itself is really ugly, but because of the default display view that's set up working with Adobe InDesign gives us a low resolution proxy. I can kind of see what that is, but it doesn't render that in perfect detail. We're going to fix that by making sure that this logo is still selected, and then going down to the Object pull-down menu. At the very bottom, you'll see Display Performance, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to change that to a high quality display. And when I do so, that logo will appear in much better quality. If I go Control 2, for example, on my Windows PC, or Command 2, working on a Mac like I am today, we can see that logo looks a heck of a lot better. Now, it eats up a little more computer power, and screen redraws aren't going to be quite so fast using this high resolution setting, but as we've done this, it makes it very easy for us to see exactly what we're working with and kind of fine-tune type when we want to do that, working with that element, or fine-tuning graphics to see what we're really going to see when we get to the end of the production process. Now in this case, I've set that for a single item. I'm going to set this rule globally for this document to work with the high resolution output setting. First thing I want to do is I'm going to click off of that. I'm going to go to my InDesign pull-down menu because I'm working on the Mac, and I'm going to go to Preferences, and then I'm going to take myself down to Display Performance. If you're working on a Windows PC, you'd be going down to the bottom of the Edit pull-down menu to select the Preferences command and go to this exact same place. Now in this case, it shows the default view here as typical. What we're going to do is we're going to change that to high quality, and this shows what those settings are. We could cheat that a little bit, but we don't have to do any adjustments there. I'm going to say OK, and as I do this now, every graphic that I place is going to be coming in at high quality and high resolution. We've already set the logo we want for the back panel of our trifold brochure, let me go Command 0 here, Control 0 if you're working on a Windows PC. And what we're going to do now is we're going to place some text inside of our document. So I'm going to go to the File pull-down menu. Now I'm going to go Place. The keyboard shortcut for that is Command D if I'm working on the Mac, Control D if I'm working with InDesign on a Windows PC. I'm going to select that, and in this case what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab addresscopy.rtf. Double click. Now don't worry if you get a missing font warning. We'll be formatting the text momentarily. And in this case, it'll give me an area to place that dummy copy that we actually used a little bit earlier when we designed our card flyer in Chapter 2 of our InDesign CS6 course. I'm just going to click the mouse button to place that text right there. I'm going to get my Type tool over here out of the Tools panel. I'm going to go anywhere inside the text, and I'm going to click to place the cursor. I'm going to go Command A to highlight all that text. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my paragraph styles, and I'm going to make that body copy. Looks like there's a stroke on it, so I'm going to Option click on the body copy. Alt click on Windows if you have a stroke on your text as well. I'll go into more detail about this a little later in this lesson. Now we can see that the font that we're working with is Times Regular or Times New Roman if you use that font in the last chapter to set up your template. 13/15. It made the width 95%. It's aligned flush left. Basically everything that I set up in the trifold template for the body copy paragraph style in my last chapter of this InDesign course has now been applied to that text. I'm going to take this text and I'm just going to adjust the text frame so it's just about the size of what I want to work with. I'm going to rotate it minus 90 degrees, and I'm going to move it right over here underneath my Total Training logo on the mail back panel. Not bad, but not very good either. As I look at this, and I've got that built, that black type really doesn't stand out across that dark blue background. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get my text cursor, and I'm going to click into the text. I'm just going to click in once, and I'm going to go Command A to highlight it all. If you're on a Windows PC, Control A will do that for you. And what I'm going to do in this case is I'm going to take the color of that type, and instead of it being black, I'm going to make it white. Now it looks black on the screen, but when I click away, I'll see that that type actually shows up as white. I'm going to do one more thing because I want to make that a little bit stronger to kind of punch that up. So I'm going to highlight all the text in the thread. And in this case, what I'm going to do is I'm going to change that type from Times Regular to Times Bold. Now, I could have also done this with the character attributes, but I'm doing it specifically this way to show you something that's significant working with Adobe InDesign. So I'm going to take that type and I'm going to make it bold. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the Paragraph Styles panel, and when I look at it, it's going to show a little plus here. What that plus means is that there are overrides or changes that have been made to this type that was body copy style. And when I put my cursor in here in this case, it actually lets me know what it is, and that is that that type was made bold and that the tint was 0% or we set reverse type. Now, it's not identical to the body copy style, but as we did this, what it actually does is it's based on that style. And if I chose to, for example, change the body copy font from Times to Arial, like we're using for our headlines, it would change the font, but it wouldn't change the things that were unique or based on that font. The fact that we reversed it and the fact that we made this type bold for it. So that's basically how this works. I'm going to click away from there. And what we're going to do next is we're going to fill in graphics and text for this gatefold or peekaboo panel that's working on the front of our trifold brochure. So I'm going to go Command D since I'm on the Mac to place. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab a logo. I'm going to double click on the Total Training Online CMYK outline.eps file. I'm going to place it at the top of the live area in that first column. And against that little blue guide that we used to offset, I'm going to click the mouse button down. And as I do that, magically that fits just about perfectly for where I want that to be. Now let's place that logo that's set in process color terms right at the top of this panel. Let's go get some text next. I'm going to first deselect, because I don't want to make that same mistake I demonstrated to you earlier. I'm going to go Command D, because I'm working on the Mac. And in this case, what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab gatefoldcopy.rtf. Double click on that. That gives me the text frame that I'm looking for. I'm going to put it up against that left guide margin here, and I'm going to click the mouse button down. And you'll see that it fills the column. I need to offset that just a little bit. And the way I'm going to do that is I'm going to move it off to the right, just like so. Now I've got all kinds of formatting that's loaded inside of this type. And it's kind of messed up. It doesn't look exactly the way that I'd like it to look. So I'm going to fix that. Whenever you're formatting type, it generally makes the most sense to use whatever type format will be predominant in here. And most of this text is going to be body copy. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to double click to change to my text cursor and place that in. I'm going to go Command A to highlight it all. If you're on a Windows PC, Control A will do the same thing. And what I'm going to do in this instance is I'm going to make it body copy. Now you'll notice as I did that, it shows that little plus. I'm going to say for the sake of argument here that I don't want any variations whatsoever in how I do this. So the way to do that is I'm going to hold down the Option key on the Mac or the Alt key if I'm working on a Windows PC, and I'm going to click once again on that style. What that does is that removes overrides. So when you hold down the Alt key on a Windows PC or hold down the Option key working on the Mac with highlighted type that's based on a defined paragraph style, clicking on that style with the Alt or Option key held down will automatically take it back and will make it the default style with no variations, no options based on what was built. So now all of this is exactly body copy type. Now I'm going to take these headers that exist on the top of each of these, feature-rich interface, time-saving, flexible, self-paced, etc. as we go through these, and I'm going to turn those into headlines very quickly and very easily by first clicking in flexible as a fine example. I'm going to click on that and say you're a headline. And what it does is I don't have to highlight the entire paragraph, but in this case it takes that and it makes that the headline style. I'm going to do the same of that for all the rest of these capitalized headers. So as I did this, this basically allowed me to set this up with those headline styles very quickly and very easily. Now, I want to do something a little bit different with the subheads that some of these have. Now, I'm going to take this and I'm going to use this to define a brand new style that's going to be based on my headline. So in this case, what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on that and I'm going to for a headline. And it's applied the styles that I want to be loaded in there. Now, I'm going to make this smaller. I just click 3 times to highlight the entire paragraph. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this type and I'm going to make it 14 points on 15-point leading. Now, I don't have a 15 here. It shows 14 or 18. That's okay. I can dial that in manually right here. I'm going to take this style that I've got right down here, and I'm going to not make that bold italic. I'm just going to make it bold. And as I've done there, you'll see what it does. It shows that it's headline, but it has overrides. I've made it bold. I've taken the type size and made it smaller, and the leading as well. We're going to create a new style that's based on this information. And when I click on that, and I double click on paragraph style 1, what I'll see is that it shows the attributes that were built into this. It says it's the headline, but it has these overrides. It's been made bold instead of bold italic. The size is 14 point, and the leading is 15 points. We're going to take this style name, and we're going to call it subhead. We're going to leave everything exactly the way we had it set before, and we're going to say OK. And when I do that, it creates a brand new subhead style that we've got right inside of here. By the way, as I explained in the last chapter of our InDesign CS6 Essentials course, I'm spelling subhead this way on purpose. So if I want to take this choose your learning speed, for example, and make it a subhead, I can do that. So for the time-saving, flexible, self-paced, and increased retention bullets we've got here, we can see that it's taken that and it's used that subhead style. Now this doesn't fit quite right. I've got one word going down to the next line. I'm going to cheat that by reducing the column width just a little bit. So I'm going to go 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4 to highlight the entire paragraph. And I'm going to bring that down from 100% to 99, just a little cheat like so. And as I do that, it's going to take that and allow me to put that back on a single line. So we're doing pretty good here in formatting this text. Let me just bring this down just a little bit to give it a little bit more even space. And we're going to do one more thing. We're going to take these headlines that we've got right here, and we're going to make them the same Pantone 288 coded color build that we used for this back panel of our trifold brochure. The way to do that is I'm going to get my text tool once again. I'm going to go to swatches. Let's bring this down to the bottom. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go 1, 2, 3 and highlight the entire thing. And I'm going to change that from black to Pantone 288. Do this once again. 1, 2, 3 to highlight the entire line. 1, 2, 3 to highlight the entire line. One last time. 1, 2, 3. And highlight the entire line. So as we've built that in, what we've been able to do is we've been able to apply a color build to that type. And sure enough, if I go back to my paragraph styles, I'll see there's a little plus that shows override. And in this case, what it is I've made it that Pantone 288 coded color build. We've built the gatefold and back panel for the front of our trifold brochure. Let's work on the cover panel. That's this third one right over here as we're building on this. And while we do that, what we're going to do is we're going to work a little bit with color graphics and arranging graphics and text to build the cover of our trifold brochure. Now, to do that, what I'm going to do first is I'm going to get my selection arrow and make sure that I have nothing selected. Whenever you're placing new documents, you always want to make sure that nothing is selected. If you don't do that, what will happen is you'll replace whatever you previously had placed with whatever you wanted to place somewhere else. So with nothing selected, I'm going to go Command D since I'm working on the Mac platform here. If you're working with a Windows PC, Control D would do the same thing. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to get the text for front cover copy.rtf. Double click on that. And I'm just going to click and put that right here in this panel. Now as I've got that built, once again we're dealing with the situation we were talking about before. In that We've got some text formatting in here, and we've got a lot of things that we'd like to do, but as a practical matter, we might want to change the rules for taking that and making that work. So I'm going to get into this with my text tool. Go Command A, Control A if you're working on a Windows PC, and I'm going to make it all body copy. Now, because I've got some formatting inside of this, what I'm going to do as well is I'm going to hold down the Alt key, Option key on the Mac, and click again to make sure that no ifs, ands, or buts. What this is this will now be body copy type. I'm going to click into the headline paragraph here, and I'm going to say you are a headline. And as I look at it, that's not bad, but it doesn't break very cleanly. If I just hit a return key here, what that'll do is sometimes that'll add extra space, which I may or may not want to do. Another way that I could do that would be to hold down the Shift and Return key on the Mac or the PC. That does what's called a soft return and allows me to keep the paragraph attributes, but takes that and sets it aside. I'm going to do the same thing here. Now I'm going to take this text, I'm going to make it a little bit larger. Let's try 19, 20, 21, 22 points. It looks like it'll take that. I'm going to take the leading and place it 22 on 21 here. What that does, that gives me a nice solid block of type that I'd like to work with. I'm going to take the swatch color and I'm going to make that Pantone 288C. Now as I do that, what's happened is it's applied the text attribute for color, and we've changed the type size. If I go back in here and click in it, and I go back to my paragraph styles, I'll see that that's based on it with the overrides to change the color, the size, and the leading for that type. So even though it looks different than my headline paragraph style, it essentially is exactly the same. I'm going to get my selection tool. I'm going to drag this down a little bit further. And what I'm going to do in this case is I'm going to highlight all this text right here. And I'm going to apply a very quick bullet attribute to it. And the way I do that is I can go from here to this little flyaway menu on the control panel and select bullets and numbering. This is also available if I'd gone from the type pull down menu. And in this case, what I'm going to do is I'm going to say this list type that I've got is going to be set for bullets. If I click the preview button, that'll let me know what that looks like. And as I look at it, I can see, ooh, that's kind of ugly. That's not exactly what I wanted. That's okay. I can deal with that and adjust for that shortly. The first thing I want to do is I want to get rid of all this extra space that I've got loaded in. So I'm going to take this tab position that says skip it over a half an inch, and I'm going to bring that down a bunch. I'm going to bring that down to 0.125 or 1/8 of an inch away from that bullet area. Now because I have the preview box checked here as I'm working with this bullets and numbering dialog box, what it's actually done is it's actually set that in, and I can see that the black area is where the text will be for that to be set a little closer. I'm going to say OK. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to get rid of these manual bullet points that were loaded in from the word processing program. Simply by clicking and placing my cursor here and pressing the delete key. So that's not bad. That's a bad looking type, except for the fact that for the cover it looks kind of wimpy. So we can take this, we're going to cheat that a little bit. We're going to highlight this type and we're going to make it larger. We're going to say 14, 15, 16, 17, 18 points. And you'll notice how that bullet area underneath here, that doesn't line up correctly. We're going to fix that in just a little bit. Let me take the leading and we'll make that 18 on 20 points. So now that type is bigger, and as we can see that works pretty well. I'm going to go to the paragraph attributes, and I'm going to give that a space after for each of these. So I'll just make that 1/8 of an inch. Drag this down a little bit further. And then I'm going to highlight this type, and I'm going to change how the type lines up for my indents. Now, remember, as I built this bullet, what it did is it set a rule, and we said it wanted it 1/8 of an inch in. So what I want to do is for the left side margin, I want to make that 0.125. And as I hit the tab key, it'll take that and it'll move everything over, as we can see, over to the right. To create a hanging indent for that bullet there, what I need to do is I need to take the first indent and I need to make that minus 0.125. And when I hit the tab key there, that will set up the bullets that I was looking for, just as I've got right in here. So I have the ability to do a fair amount of formatting and fine-tuning as I'm working with this type, dealing with bulleted type, simply by adjusting margins working in the control panel. I could have also done this from the paragraph attributes that I have loaded in here, but we'll just work from the control panel. So as I've got that set, this let me build this and really fine-tune what I'm looking for. Now as I've got this text, I've got kind of an ugly spot in here. This will allow me to demonstrate what that ability to set a discretionary return in here, or soft return into it is. If I want to take that all courses and split it down to the next line, and I just hit the return key, you'll see what it does. It creates a brand new bullet and a different indent. I want to use what's known as a forced line break. So I don't want to change the paragraph attributes. I just want to push this down to the next line. So as I'm doing this here, what I'm going to do is just select that, and you'll see it broke it down just like so. I'm going to do the same thing here for this project files, but this time I'm going to use the keyboard shortcut to go Shift Return. That works the same on the Mac or the PC, to break that down to the next line. So that discretionary, or that forced line break, doesn't change my paragraph attributes. It doesn't create a brand new bullet. It just takes this and builds this in. I'm going to take this extra space out of here, and I'm going to take this type and I'm going to align that over to the right, just like so. Now I want to place a couple of graphics. I'm going to go Command D, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab a graphic here. The one I want is 2 volts, computer graphics, etc. masked. When I open it and I place that graphic down, you'll see that there's no background really loaded into that. I'm going to move this over here so the left side margin comes right up against the blue folding point that I've set for my back panel. I'm going to go Command Shift, working on the Mac platform, Control Shift if I was working with a Windows PC, and I'm going to stretch this up and to the right to the point where it fills all the way to the bleed area outside of my page. Now that looks pretty good, except for the fact that I want to put one of these logos up on top, and I've got all this extra space below. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to line that up just like so, adjust it so it fits. Going to hold down the Shift key and click on the picture as well, so I have both the text and the image selected. And I'm going to scoot that down to the point to where it fits right on the bottom, just like so. Then I'm going to go get my Total Training Online logo. I'm going to go Command C to copy it. I'm going to go Command V to paste it. That puts it smack in the center of my page. And I'm going to move this all the way up here to the very top of that third column or front cover. Now, I've got a little bit more fine-tuning to do. I want to break this picture, and we'll bring it down just a hair. I've clicked on it, and I'm using the arrow keys to bump that down just a touch. I'm going to do the same here with my text. And since I've finished the front cover of my trifold brochure, let's save our work. I'm going to go File, Save or Save As. It really doesn't matter which we select because we can see that this is untitled. It doesn't have a name before it, so I'm just going to click on Save. And what I'm going to do in this case is I'm not going to place it in Chapter 5. I'm going to place it in Chapter 6. And I'm going to name this file my name. You can use your first name here. And then the number 6, so I know where my working file is. And you'll notice by default, it wants to save that as an InDesign CS6 document. We're going to let it do that by clicking the Save button right here and creating the front of our trifold brochure. In this unit of our InDesign CS6 course, I'm going to show you some techniques that you can use to create duplicates of work that you've already done that you can reuse and repurpose in your InDesign documents, as opposed to recreating the same thing over and over again. Now, in the previous unit of our InDesign course, we finished up the front of our trifold brochure. Let's go work on the inside. I'm going to go get our Pages panel, and I'm going to double-click on Page 2. Remember, double-clicking ensures that you'll see this blue field highlighted as well as the number highlighted, and that both of those together indicate that we're actually on Page 2 of our InDesign document. We can also confirm that with the number that sits all the way over here to the lower left-hand corner of our document window. I'm going to create a color field that we're going to use for a background to define each of the 3 panels we have here to talk about 3 different types of software courses that Total Training offers to people like you, our students. I'm going to get my rectangle tool, and I'm going to move to the center panel right here. I'm going to go to the very edge of the bleed area and the guide that divides the first and second panels. Hold the mouse button down, and I'm going to create a rectangle that is 8.5 inches wide by 5/8 of an inch, or 0.625 inches deep. Now, you'll see I can't hit that precisely. As I drag that up, I go to 6.2. I go to 6.425. For some reason, I can't hit precisely that 6.2 number. So I'm going to get close. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to change this from the top. Now remember, we rotated this page to change the orientation that we see. So what is actually the top of the page in landscape view will be referred to as the left reference point, as we're looking at this as the vertical view on our screen. So I'm going to click on that, and what I'm going to do is from this spot, I'm going to change the height of this from 0.62 to 0.625, and that will make it exactly 5/8 of an inch, in this case deep, as we're working with it. Now we use that Pantone deep blue for all of our collaterals for our Total Training courses. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this and I'm going to change the fill of this rectangle from none to Pantone 288. I'm going to take the stroke and I'm going to change that from black to none. So I now have a solid deep blue rectangle all the way around this area. I've created one of them exactly the way I want it. So I'm going to create a second one now, but not from scratch. I'm going to place my cursor in this blue field, hold the mouse button down and start dragging it down. As I drag that down, I'm going to hold down the Option key. And what that does, that creates a copy of this. If you're working on a Windows PC, you'd actually take this and hold down the Alt key to do the same thing I'm doing right here. So by holding down the mouse button and the Option key on the Mac, or the Alt key if you're working on a Windows PC, this actually allows me to drag this down okay, and create a copy of the original element. I'm going to release the mouse button, and there's my second blue field. Now to do this just one more time to show how it works, I'm going to go to this bottom field that I have selected. I'm going to hold the mouse button down, and then I'm going to hold down the Option key. If you're working on a Windows PC, you want to grab that Alt key. And I'm going to drag this up to the top. But this time I'm going to hold the Shift key. As I hold the Shift key, I can only drag this horizontally, like so, vertically, like so, or if it can't figure out which one of those, I can bring it out at exactly diagonal 45-degree angles. But in this case, I actually want to bring that up vertically. So I'm going to hold the Shift key down and the Option key, and I'm going to drag this all the way up to the top of my trim area, just like so. Release the mouse button, and there's my third color field, one defining each one of these three separate panels. Now for the top one, I want to allow a bleed area, so I'm actually going to alter that by going to this top center anchor point, holding the mouse button down, and actually dragging that up a little bit higher to the very edge of my bleed box. So that's one way I can take a graphic element that I've built and I can duplicate it so I don't have to keep recreating it. I can hold down the Option or Alt key, depending if I'm on the Mac or the PC, and drag with the mouse button, and it will create a copy of whatever the original element was that I'm moving. I'm going to show you another way we can work with that, but first I've got to place something. So I'm going to go Command D to select the File Place menu command, Control D if you're on a Windows PC. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go down to the bottom of these files that we have selected, and I'm going to select the Total Training Icon Character Reverse.eps file. As I double click on this, what that's going to do is it's going to allow me to place that little logo. Now you can't see it right here because it's a white graphic on a white background. So I'm going to take this, I'm going to move it over into this blue color field at the top. So I'm actually placing this 1/8 of an inch down and 1/8 of an inch in from the upper left-hand corner of the page. And when I release the mouse button, there's my little Total Training logo. Now I'm going to place a second one and a third one right down here, just like so. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on this. I'm going to go Edit, Copy, or I could have just used the keyboard shortcut Command-C on the Mac, Control-C on a Windows PC. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go Edit, Step and Repeat. The keyboard shortcut for that is Command-Option-U on the Mac, Control-Alt-U if you're working on the Windows PC. So I'm going to click on that, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to place two of them 3.5 inches down vertically from the element that I've got right here. Since my preview box is checked, you'll see that it's placed the second one and the third one exactly where I want those to be. I'm very happy with that, so I'm going to say OK. And as I do, I was able to very quickly place two more copies of this exactly where I wanted it to be. So that's another way that I can take a graphic element that I've put in one place and copy it and place multiple copies of it somewhere else I want them to be in my InDesign document. By simply copying it and using the Step and Repeat command, both of them under the Edit pull-down menu, we can actually do this function. Now let's set some type. I'm going to get my text tool here, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to go somewhere there's nothing and drag down a new separate text frame, just like so. Now you'll notice as I get to a point, what it does, it shows that this type is going to be exactly the same height as my logos. I have the small smart guides that show just to the right of those Total Training logos, and I have another little smart guide that shows to match up here over to the right of the text frame that I'm drawing. So I'm going to let go of the mouse button now, and I'm going to type Adobe Creative Suite, because that's the first block of graphic programs I want to emphasize that we offer training for with Total Training. So I'm going to go Command-A to highlight it all, and I'm going to go to my Paragraph Styles panel, and I'm going to make this a headline. So right now, I've applied all of the type attributes that we have to the headline paragraph style. It's Arial, bold italic, 18-point type on 18-point leading. Now that's kind of small to fill in the space that I'd like to work with right here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to change that type size, and I'm going to make it 30 points. I'm going to change the leading to match. And then I'm going to take this text and I'm going to place it to line up to the right of the top little logo. So I've placed that type. It looks like it's the right size, but it's awful hard to tell when it's black type against a navy blue background. So I'm going to double click to place my text cursor inside the type, and then I'm going to go Command A to highlight it all. I'm going to go to color, and I'm going to change that from black type to white or reverse type. And when I click away, there's my text placed right where I'd like it to be. Now in this case, what I want to do, once again, is even though I'm going to have different text, I want it to be placed in the same relationship to what these logos are. So I'm going to click on that. I'm going to go Command C to copy it, since I'm working on a Mac for this chapter of our InDesign course. I'm going to go Command Option U to open the step and repeat dialog box. Now it remembered the settings we had before, and those work, it looks like, pretty well for what I want to do here. I can see the second and the third lined up exactly the same way. I can see the vertical offset that we had before, and because the preview box is checked, I can see what I'm going to get. I'm going to say OK, and I'll have all three of these placed with the same relationship to these logos in the top one as it has in the center and the bottom ones. Now the text is not going to say the same thing, but I've at least placed it all. All I need to do now is get my type tool, double click inside this frame. I'm going to go 1, 2, 3 to highlight the entire line, and I'm going to type Apple Software Applications. I'm going to do the same thing down here, triple click. I'll place the cursor and then 1, 2, 3 times to highlight the entire line, and I'm going to put here Microsoft Office Applications. So very quickly what I could do was I could take recurring elements and place them very quickly and very easily working with Adobe InDesign. When I needed to change those, as I did up here to give a little bit of extra space to that color field to go all the way to the bleed box, or as I did right here in the second and third panels to change the type to make it what I want it to read for each of those separate channels, it's very easy for me to alter something that's pretty much set up exactly the way I'd like it to be than it is for us to start all over again from scratch.